Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was trained by Sonic the Hedgehog for 3 years, making it his goal to make him powerful without a quirk, with Tails helping him as well, and Izuku receives one for all afterwards. And Sonic encourages Izuku to have confidence and not care what people think of him. Smash that subscribe button and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sky over Muzidafu was a bruised purple, the clouds looking less like fluffy cotton and more like old bruises healing on the skin of the atmosphere. It was a fitting canopy for Izuku Midoriya. Izuku was 12 years old, and he had learned the fundamental truth of the world at the age of 4. Men are not created equal. It was a lesson taught not in a classroom, but in a doctor's office with the sterile smell of antiseptic and the click of an X-ray light box. It was a lesson reinforced every day since, usually with the smell of nitroglycerin and the sound of laughter. He walked with his head down, counting the cracks in the pavement. 1, 2, 3. If he stepped on a crack, maybe the universe would finally crack open and swallow him whole. 4, 5. No such luck. His shoulder throbbed. A fresh burn, courtesy of Katsuki Bakugo's palm, was blistering beneath his Gakurin uniform. But the physical pain was a dull roar compared to the sharp, jagged glass of the words that were still bouncing around his skull. Asterisk. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof of the building and pray you'll be born with a quirk in the next life. Asterisk. Izuku stopped walking. He stood in the middle of the sidewalk, the pedestrian traffic parting around him like a river around a stone. He clutched the strap of his yellow backpack so tightly his knuckles turned white. Idiot, Izuku whispered, his voice trembling. If I actually did it, that would be inciting suicide. You could get arrested, Kaken. He tried to summon the usual indignation, the righteousness that a hero should feel, but it felt hollow. It felt like ash. Because the terrifying part wasn't that Kaken had said it. The terrifying part was that, for a split second, as he looked over the railing of the school roof before leaving, Izuku had considered the logic. He shook his head violently, scattering the tears that were gathering in the corners of his eyes. Asterisk. No. No, I have to keep going. I have to. I just have to. Asterisk. He didn't want to go home. If he went home, his mother would see the burns. She would see the singed fabric of his uniform. She would cry, and she would apologize. Asterisk. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry. Asterisk. He hated that apology. It wasn't her fault. It was his genetics. It was the toe joint. It was fate. His feet carried him on autopilot, taking a detour away from the apartment complex and toward the edge of the city. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and rot. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. Once, it had been a beautiful coastline. Now, it was a graveyard for the things society didn't want anymore. Tires, broken refrigerators, rusted cars, mountains of plastic bottles, and debris drifted in with the tide and stayed there. It was illegal dumping on a massive scale, ignored by the heroes and the police alike because it was just too much effort to clean. It was perfect for Izuku. It was a place for broken things. He navigated a path through the trash canyons he had memorized over the years. He climbed over a rusted washing machine and slid down a pile of tires, landing in a small, secluded clearing near the water's edge. The walls of garbage were high here, blocking out the city, blocking out the people, blocking out the noise. He dropped his backpack onto the sand. He pulled out his notebook, Asterisk Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 11 star. It was scorched black, soggy from where Bakugo had tossed it into the koi pond, and smelled like burnt sugar. Izuku sat on an overturned bucket, staring at the ruined cover. He tried to wipe the grime off All Might's signature, but the ink smeared. It's useless, he choked out. The dam broke. He curled in on himself, burying his face in his knees. The sobs came out as ugly, heaving gasps. He cried for the burn on his shoulder. He cried for the notebook. He cried because he was 12 years old, and he knew, with the crushing certainty of an adult, that his dream was dead. I just wanted to save people, he whispered to the trash. I just wanted to be like you, All Might. The wind howled off the ocean, rattling the loose metal of the garbage piles. It sounded like the world was laughing. Crack boom! The sound wasn't thunder. It sounded like the fabric of reality snapping like a dry twig, amplified by 1,000 speakers. Izuku yelped, falling backward off his bucket. He scrambled into the sand, looking up. Above the piles of trash, the sky was tearing open. It wasn't a warp gate like the heroes used. This was violent. A swirling vortex of gold and static electricity ripped through the clouds, displacing the air with a pressure that made Izuku's ears pop. Whoa, whoa, whoa! A voice shouted from the sky. It sounded young, brash, and completely panicked. Stabilize the trajectory. We're coming in too hot. A second voice yelled, this one higher pitched, accompanied by the whirring of machinery. I can't control it. The chaos control is fizzling out. Brace for impact, buddy. Sonic, look out for the... Something shot out of the golden ring in the sky like a meteor. It was a blur of blue and yellow, spinning rapidly. The vortex snapped shut instantly, leaving a vacuum that sucked the air back in with a loud thwump. The object, or objects, smashed into the largest mountain of trash on the beach. Crash! A rusted pickup truck at the top of the pile was launched into the air. Tires rained down like rubber hail. A massive cloud of dust, sand, and debris exploded outward. Izuku covered his head, curling into a ball as a hubcap frisbeed over his head and embedded itself in the sand a few feet away. Silence returned to the beach, broken only by the settling dust and the creaking of disturbed junk. Izuku's heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Villains? He thought, his analytical mind trying to override his terror. An invasion? A capsule from space? That energy signature didn't match any known pro-hero in the prefecture. Trembling, he peeked over his arms. The dust was clearing. At the base of the trash mountain, amidst a pile of scattered garbage bags, something was moving. Ugh, my head, the first voice groaned. That's the last time I let you calibrate the coordinates while we're running from Eggman. Tails. Me? The second voice squeaked indignantly. You're the one who spin-dashed into the generator while the portal was opening. I told you it would destabilize the localized field. Izuku blinked. He rubbed his eyes and blinked again. Emerging from the trash were two animals. One was a blue hedgehog. But he wasn't a normal hedgehog. He stood on two legs, about a meter tall, wearing white gloves and red sneakers with a white strap across the middle. His quills swept back from his head in an aerodynamic shape that looked sharp enough to cut glass. The other was a fox. An orange fox, slightly shorter, also bipedal, wearing gloves and shoes. But the most distinct feature was that he had two large, fluffy tails that were currently twitching in irritation. He was holding a strange, yellow tablet-like device and tapping away at it furiously. Mutants? Izuku whispered. Animal-type mutation quirks are common, but usually, they retain more human features. These two look completely cartoonish. The blue hedgehog shook himself like a wet dog, sending a cloud of dust flying. He stretched, his spine popping audibly. Man, that landing was rough. I think I got a spring loose. He looked around, his green eyes widening as he took in the surroundings. Whoa. Talk about a dump. Literally. Hey, Tails, where are we? Green Hill Zone's recycling center? The fox, Tails, was waving his device around. I'm getting weird readings, Sonic. The atmospheric composition is similar to Earth, but the magnetic poles are slightly shifted. And the energy background. It's strange. There's a biological energy permeating the air that I've never seen before. So, not Mobius? Definitely not Mobius. And definitely not our version of Earth. Tails sighed, his ears drooping. Sonic, I think the prototype warp ring malfunctioned. We didn't just jump space. We might have jumped dimensions. Sonic put his hands on his hips and tapped his red shoe against a piece of scrap metal. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm was incredibly fast. Great. Just great. And I assume the Chaos Emeralds are gone, Tails confirmed. Scattered. The instability knocked them out of orbit. They could be anywhere on this planet. Sonic sighed, running a hand through his quills. Standard procedure, then? Find the rocks, fix the ride, go home. Easy peasy. Then, Sonic's ears swiveled. He froze. Izuku held his breath. He had been spotted. Sonic turned his head, his green eyes locking onto Izuku's hiding spot behind the overturned washing machine. A smirk tugged at the corner of the hedgehog's mouth. Yo! Tails, looks like we've got a welcoming committee. Sonic moved. He didn't walk. He didn't run. 1 second he was standing 20 feet away, and the next second, there was a blue blur, a gust of wind that blew Izuku's bangs back, and the hedgehog was leaning casually against the washing machine, looking down at Izuku. Hey there, kid, Sonic said, giving a 2-finger salute. Don't suppose you know where the nearest chili dog stand is? I'm starving. Izuku shrieked and scrambled backward, his back hitting the sand. Please don't hurt me. I don't have anything. I'm sorry. Sonic blinked, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion. He looked at his gloved hands, then back at Izuku. Hurt you? Do I look like a bad guy? I mean, I'm spiky, sure, but I moisturize. Tails walked over, his twin tails spinning behind him like a propeller to give him a little boost over a pile of tires. Sonic, you're scaring him. He's a local. We look like aliens to him. We are aliens, Tails, Sonic pointed out. He crouched down, trying to get to eye level with Izuku. Hey, relax, little guy. I'm Sonic. Sonic the Hedgehog. And that's Tails. We're the good guys. Usually. Izuku was hyperventilating. His mind was racing a mile a minute. Asterisk speed. He moved instantly. Teleportation? No, I felt the wind pressure. Extreme velocity. Physical enhancement type? Or maybe time manipulation? And the fox, flying? Support gear or biological? Asterisk. You're not villains? Izuku squeaked. Villains? Sonic scoffed. Please. I save the world before breakfast. Usually by lunch, I'm taking a nap. Sonic's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked closer at Izuku. He noticed the tear streaks cutting through the grime on the boy's face. He saw the red, puffy eyes. He saw the way the kid was trembling, not just from fear of the aliens, but from something deeper. Sonic's demeanor shifted. The cocky smirk softened into something more inquisitive. Whoa, kid! You look like you've been through the ringer, Sonic said, gesturing to the tear tracks. And I don't mean because a giant blue hedgehog just fell out of the sky. You were crying before we got here. Izuku wiped his face aggressively with his sleeve. It's nothing. I'm fine. You're terrible at lying, Sonic said bluntly. He sat down on the sand, crossing his legs. Come on. Spill. Why are you hiding in a garbage dump crying your eyes out? Did you drop your ice cream? Girl trouble? Bad haircut? Sonic. Tails chided, tapping away on his tablet. Be polite. I am being polite. I'm asking about his feelings. Sonic shot back. Izuku stared at them. This was surreal. A blue hedgehog was asking about his emotional state, but there was something about Sonic's presence, a relaxed, unbothered confidence, that made the words bubble up in Izuku's throat. Maybe it was because they were strangers. Aliens. They didn't know the rules of this society. They didn't know he was Deku. Izuku started, his voice cracking. I want to be a hero. Sonic tilted his head. Okay. That sounds like a cool job. So go be a hero. I can't, Izuku whispered. Why not? Izuku gripped his knees. Because I'm quirkless. Sonic and Tails exchanged a look. Quirkless? Tails asked, looking up from his screen. Is that a local term? Izuku sniffled. Quirks. They're superpowers. 80% of the population has them. Everyone has something special. Fire breathing, telekinesis, super strength. But I don't have anything. I'm normal. I'm weak. He looked down at his red shoes. Ordinary sneakers, not cool like Sonic's. The other kids, they beat me up. They tell me to kill myself because I'm useless without a power. I tried so hard. I analyze heroes, I study, I take notes, but today, he gestured vaguely to his burnt notebook lying in the sand. Today I realize they're right. You can't be a hero without a quirk. I'm just empty. The silence stretched out. The wind rustled the trash. Then, a sound cut through the air. Ha, then again. Ha ha. Izuku froze. He looked up. Sonic was laughing. He wasn't laughing deeply, or cruelly. It was a light, airy chuckle. He leaned back on his hands, looking at the sky. That's it? That's the big tragedy? Indignation flared in Izuku's chest. For the first time in years, anger overpowered his fear. It's not funny! You don't understand. In this world, if you don't have power, you're nothing. You're just a stepping stone for the people who do. Kid, Sonic said, sitting up straight. His green eyes were suddenly sharp, piercing. Look at me. Izuku flinched but held his gaze. Do you see a quirk on me? Sonic asked. Well, you're a talking hedgehog. Yeah, that's just biology where I'm from. Sonic waved a hand dismissively. But powers? Magic? Energy blasts? I don't have any of that. I can't shoot fire. I can't read minds. I can't lift a building with my mind. Sonic stood up. He dusted the sand off his legs. I'm just fast, Sonic said simply. That's it. I run. I wasn't born with some destiny. I wasn't given a magic sword. I just decided that I wanted to run, so I ran until no one could catch me. But speed is a power, Izuku argued. That's a quirk, is it? Sonic grinned. It was a dangerous, challenging grin. Tails, what's my top speed? Tails didn't look up from his tablet. Unknown. You broke the measuring equipment last time. But comfortably hypersonic. Hypersonic. Izuku gasped. Physics, kid, Sonic said, tapping his temple. It's not magic. It's friction, momentum, and attitude. You think I care what people think? I've had gods, monsters, and angry scientists with giant robots tell me I'm just a rodent. They tell me I'm too small, too weak, too annoying. Sonic leaned in close, his nose inches from Izuku's. I didn't listen to a single one of them. And you know where they are now? Izuku shook his head, mesmerized. In my dust, Sonic whispered. Suddenly, Sonic vanished. Boom! The sound barrier shattered instantly. A shockwave exploded outward from where Sonic had been standing. Izuku was thrown back into the sand, shielding his face. The beach became a blur. A streak of blue light ricocheted off the trash piles. Asterisk zoom. Whoosh. ZZZZT. Asterisk. The wind howled like a hurricane. Trash was flying everywhere. Izuku watched, wide-eyed, as the blue blur ran up the side of a rusted crane, spun into a ball, and smashed through a stack of old cars like a bowling ball through pins. The blue streak moved across the water, kicking up a rooster tail of spray 50 feet high, then circled back. He was moving so fast he was invisible, just a presence of kinetic energy. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. Sonic skidded to a halt in front of Izuku, smoke rising from his shoes. But the beach was different. The clearing where they were sitting was clean. In the 3 seconds Sonic had been moving, he had created a vortex that swept all the loose trash in the immediate vicinity into a neat, towering pyramid of garbage 50 yards away. The sand around them was smooth. Sonic dusted off his hands. He wasn't even out of breath. See? Sonic grinned. No quirk. Just cardio. Izuku's jaw was on the floor. His brain had short-circuited. That wasn't just speed. That was impossible. The G-force alone should have liquefied his internal organs. The friction should have set the air on fire. How? Izuku stammered. Practice, Sonic winked. He looked down at Izuku. You said you analyze heroes, right? Izuku nodded dumbly. So, analyze me, Sonic said. Am I a hero? You saved the world? Plenty of times. Then yes. And I'm quirkless by your definition, Sonic pointed out. I'm just a guy who runs fast. Izuku looked at the clean sand. He looked at the pyramid of trash. He looked at the blue hedgehog who defied all laws of physics and biology just by existing. You let people tell you who you are, Sonic said, his voice dropping the joking tone. You let that explosive kid, Kaken was it, define your value. Take a swan dive. What a load of trash. Sonic kicked a stray soda can. It flew into the distance, vanishing with a twinkle. The only person who decides if you're useless is you, kid. If you stop running, you lose. But if you keep moving, nothing can touch you. Tails walked up, looking somber. Sonic, bad news. The dimensional drift fried the warp ring's main circuit. I can fix it, but I need parts. Rare parts. And without the Chaos Emeralds as a power source, we're not generating enough energy to punch a hole back to Mobius. Sonic groaned, throwing his head back. So we're stuck? For the foreseeable future, Tails nodded. I need to set up a workshop, scan the planet for the emeralds, and rebuild the drive. It could take months. Maybe years. Sonic looked at the setting sun. Then he looked down at Izuku, who was still sitting on the sand, clutching his burnt notebook. Sonic smirked. An idea was forming. A wonderful, awful idea. Well, Sonic said, stretching his arms. If we're stuck here, I'm gonna get bored. I hate being bored. He looked at Izuku. Hey, kid. What's your name? Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. Well, Izuku, Sonic said, extending a gloved hand. You've got a lot of free time now that you're done crying, right? Izuku looked at the hand. I guess? You want to be a hero? Sonic asked. You want to prove them wrong? That Kaken guy? The doctors? The world? Izuku felt a spark in his chest. A tiny, fragile ember that he thought had been extinguished earlier that day. Yes, he breathed. More than anything, I can't give you a quirk, Sonic said. I can't give you super strength or fire breath. Sonic grinned, and the sun caught the edge of his teeth, making him look wild and free. But if you stick with me, I can teach you how to run. I can teach you how to be faster than the things that are chasing you. I can teach you how to be. Sonic gave a thumbs up. Way past cool. Izuku looked at the hand. It was a lifeline. It was a chance. He thought about All Might. I am here. He thought about Bakugo. Take a swan dive. He thought about his mother. I'm sorry. He stood up. He wiped the last tear from his cheek. His legs were shaking, but he stood. Izuku reached out and grabbed Sonic's hand. The glove was warm. Please, Izuku said, his voice finding a new strength. Train me. Sonic pulled him into a handshake, then slapped him on the back, nearly knocking the wind out of him. That's the spirit. Sonic laughed. But first things first. We need to do something about those shoes. Red is a good color, but the grip is terrible. Tails sighed, tucking his tablet away. I guess I'm designing training gear. And a nutrition plan. Sonic, human physiology isn't like yours. If he runs like you, his legs will snap. Details. Sonic waved him off. Tails, you handle the science. I'll handle the style. Sonic looked at Izuku, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Get ready, Izuku. Tomorrow, we start. And I warn you. I don't do slow. Izuku nodded. He looked at the pile of trash, then out at the ocean. For the first time in his life, the world didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a track, and the race was just beginning. Later that evening, Izuku walked through the front door of his apartment. I'm home. Inko Midoriya rushed out of the kitchen, her face etched with worry. Izuku! You're late. I was so worried. And look at you, you're filthy. Did something happen at school? She reached for him, her eyes scanning for injuries, waiting for the inevitable tears, the story of bullying, the sadness. Izuku stopped her gently. He looked at his mother. He was covered in grime from the beach. His uniform was singed. He was exhausted, but he wasn't crying. He stood up straighter. He offered a small, tired, but genuine smile. I'm okay, Mom, he said. I met some new friends. We were hanging out. Inko froze. Friends? Yeah, Izuku said, clutching the strap of his backpack where the burnt notebook lay. But now, right next to the notebook, lay a small, golden ring that Sonic had tossed him as a down payment on their partnership. There, really fast. Inko looked at her son. She saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen in years. The dull, glassy look of resignation was gone. In its place was a light. It wasn't the blinding, manic hope of a child watching an All Might video. It was steady. It was confident. Okay, Inko smiled, tears pricking her eyes for a different reason. Okay, Izuku. Go wash up. Dinner is ready. Izuku went to his room. He closed the door and leaned against it. He walked over to his desk. He looked at the posters of All Might plastered on every wall. The symbol of peace. The strongest hero. Izuku sat down and opened a fresh notebook. He picked up a pen. He didn't write about All Might this time. He wrote a header, Project Green Blur. Underneath, he wrote the first lesson Sonic had taught him, words that were still ringing in his ears. Don't let the world tell you how fast you can go. Izuku looked out his window at the darkened city. Somewhere out there, a blue hedgehog and a two-tailed fox were building a base in a trash heap. It was insane. It was illogical. It was perfect. Izuku Midoriya smiled. Too slow, Kaken, he whispered into the empty room. Too slow. The next morning 5:00 a.m. The sun hadn't even risen when something tapped on Izuku's bedroom window. Izuku groggily rolled over, checking his All Might alarm clock. 5:00 a.m.? Tap, 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 tap. The rhythm was fast. Impatient, Izuku scrambled out of bed and opened the window. Sonic was hanging upside down from the roof gutter, grinning. He was holding a chilly dog in one hand. Morning, sleepyhead. Sonic chirped, taking a bite off to the dog. Sun's up. Well, almost. The early bird catches the worm, but the fast hedgehog gets the chilly dog. Sonic? Izuku whispered, trying not to wake his mom. How did you find my house? Tails tracked your student ID card, Sonic said casually. Don't worry about it. Privacy is a slow concept. Get dressed. Wear something stretchy. We're hitting the beach. Now? Yesterday you said more than anything, Sonic said, his eyes narrowing playfully. Did you mean it? Or are you gonna hit the snooze button on your dream? Izuku didn't hesitate. Give me 2 minutes. I'll give you one, Sonic replied, dropping from the gutter and landing silently on the railing. Go! Izuku scrambled into his gym clothes, the classic green tracksuit. He laced up his red sneakers. He grabbed a water bottle. He wrote a quick note for his mom, gone for a run. Back for breakfast, He climbed out the window, sliding down the drain pipe with a surprising amount of agility. Sonic was waiting at the street corner, tapping his foot. Tails was there too, hovering in the tornado, a red biplane that looked like it had been cobbled together from scrap metal overnight, yet hummed with a futuristic purr. 1 minute and 12 seconds, Sonic noted, looking at an imaginary watch on his wrist. We'll work on that. The tornado is operational, Tails called out from the cockpit, adjusting his goggles. I've mapped out a training route through the industrial district. Low traffic, plenty of obstacles. You hear that, kid? Sonic grinned at Izuku. Follow the fox. Wait, we're running to the beach? Izuku asked, bouncing on his heels. Eventually, Sonic said. He stretched his legs. But first, we gotta wake up those legs. Try to keep up. I can't run as fast as you, Sonic, Izuku admitted. Not yet, Sonic agreed. So I'll jog. But I'm warning you, my jog is your sprint. Sonic took off. He didn't create a sonic boom this time, but he moved with an effortless grace, gliding over the pavement. Izuku gritted his teeth and pushed off. He sprinted. He ran harder than he had ever run in P class. The wind whipped past his ears. They tore through the quiet streets of Musudafu. Sonic led the way, hopping over mailboxes, grinding on guardrails, and running sideways along walls. Come on, Izuku! Sonic called back, running backward now so he could face the boy. Pick up those knees. Don't just run with your legs, run with your whole body. Use your arms. Momentum is your friend, Izuku panted, his lungs burning. Trying, don't try. Sonic laughed. Do it. If you trip, turn it into a roll. If you hit a wall, run up it. As they approached a construction site, Sonic leaped over a 10-foot fence. Izuku scrambled, grabbing the chain link and hauling himself over, landing clumsily on the other side. Graceful, Sonic teased from atop a stack of steel beams. Like a sack of potatoes. I'm working on it. Izuku wheezed. Tails flew overhead, shouting through a megaphone. Izuku, your stride is uneven. You're favoring your right side. Lean into the turns. Since when is math part of running? Izuku yelled back. Since always. Tails replied. They reached Dagoba Beach as the sun finally broke over the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and pink. Izuku collapsed onto the sand, gasping for air. His legs felt like jelly. His chest was on fire. He felt like he was going to throw up. Sonic stood over him, looking as fresh as a daisy. He wasn't even sweating. Not bad, Sonic said, nodding. For a human. You've got heart, kid. I'll give you that. Izuku rolled onto his back, staring up at the blue hedgehog. Is it always this hard? Sonic looked out at the ocean. His expression turned serious for a moment. Life's hard, Izuku. Villains are hard. Being a hero? That's the hardest thing there is. But running? Sonic offered a hand to pull Izuku up. Running is freedom. Once you get fast enough, nothing can hold you down. Not gravity, not the past, and definitely not some explosions. Izuku took the hand and pulled himself up. He was exhausted, sore, and scared of what the next 3 years would bring. But as he looked at Sonic, and then at the endless horizon, Izuku smiled. Again, Izuku said. Sonic grinned, his eyes lighting up. Now you're talking my language. Tails, set up the obstacle course. We're going for round 2. You got it, Sonic. Izuku Midoriya took a deep breath. The air smelled of salt and possibility. He wasn't the quirkless boy who needed saving anymore. He was the student of the fastest thing alive, and he was done running away. Now, he was running towards something. Let's go! Izuku shouted. Gotta go fast. Sonic yelled back, blasting off down the beach in a spray of sand. Izuku sprinted after him, chasing the green blur into the future. The alarm clock didn't stand a chance. At 4:30 a.m., 3 months into the training, Izuku Midoriya's hand snapped out from under the covers. He didn't smash the snooze button. He tapped the off switch with a precision that would have made a surgeon jealous, all without opening his eyes. His body woke up in stages. First, the awareness of the room. Then the dull, throbbing ache that lived permanently in his calves and quadriceps. Finally, the hunger. It was a ravenous, bottomless pit in his stomach that demanded calories immediately. Izuku rolled out of bed, landing in a crouch. He didn't stumble. He didn't groan. He just moved. His room looked different. The All Might posters were still there, beaming with American-style heroism, but they were now sharing space with diagrams of aerodynamics, sketches of suspension bridges, and complex formulas regarding friction coefficients. On his desk, *Hero Analysis for the Future Volume 13* sat next to a stack of textbooks on college-level biomechanics that Tails had borrowed from the local library's digital archive. Izuku looked at the mirror. He wasn't the scrawny, trembling boy from the beach anymore. He wasn't All Might bulk either. He didn't have the slab-like pectorals or the tree-trunk neck of a power-type hero. He was wire-thin and corded with muscle. His legs were developing a definition that looked almost unnatural, the muscles tailored for explosive power rather than lifting heavy objects. He looked like a compressed spring, waiting for a trigger. Physiology of Speed, he muttered to himself, reciting the title of Tails' latest lecture. Lesson 1, Mass is the enemy of acceleration. Lesson 2, Momentum is the god we pray to. He grabbed a protein bar from a box on his dresser, Tails' special formula, which tasted like chalk and mint, and devoured it in 2 bites. He opened the window. The cool morning air of Muzutafu rushed in. There was no Sonic hanging from the gutter today. That had stopped after the first month. Now, the expectation was simple: show up, or get left behind. Izuku vaulted over the sill, grabbed the drain pipe, and slid down. He hit the pavement running. The Green Hill Base, formerly Dagoba Beach. The landscape of Dagoba Beach had changed. The towering mountains of trash were no longer chaotic piles of refuse. They had been reorganized. Under Tails' architectural direction, and Sonic's high-speed labor, the garbage had been sorted. The recyclables were stacked in neat cubes. The scrap metal had been repurposed. In the center of the largest clearing stood Green Hill Base. It was a fortress of solitude made of shipping containers, welded car chassis, and salvaged electronics. A large radar dish made from old umbrellas and a microwave oven spun lazily on the roof. Inside the main courtyard, a cleared circle of packed sand about 50 meters wide, Sonic was waiting. He was stretching, one leg propped up on a stack of tires, his nose buried in a manga he had found in the trash. "You're late," Sonic said without looking up. "I'm 30 seconds early," Izuku countered, jogging into the circle and dropping his bag. "Exactly," Sonic grinned, tossing the manga aside. "You used to be 2 minutes early. You're getting comfortable. Comfort is slow." "Good morning to you too, Sonic," Izuku panted, beginning his own stretches. He grabbed his ankle, pulling his heel to his glute. The burn was familiar and grounding. "Tails is running diagnostics on the Tornado's engine," Sonic said, hopping down. "So today, it's just you and me." "And the course?" Izuku swallowed hard. "The course. It changed every day." Sonic built it out of the junk piles. It was a labyrinth of unstable footing, vertical climbs, swinging hazards, and razor-sharp scrap metal. It was designed to kill you, or at least that's what it felt like. "Today's lesson isn't about running," Sonic announced, walking to the center of the ring. He tapped his red shoe impatiently. "It's about falling." "I'm pretty good at falling," Izuku muttered. "I do it a lot." "No," Sonic corrected, wagging a finger. "You crash. There's a difference. When you hit a wall, you stop. When you trip, you face plant. You're fighting gravity, Izuku. You need to make gravity work for you." Sonic pointed to a precarious stack of rusted washing machines that towered about 30 feet into the air. At the top was a single, golden ring. "Get the ring," Sonic ordered. "Don't stop moving. If your feet stay on a surface for more than half a second, you fail." Izuku stared at the tower. It was unstable. The metal was slick with morning dew. "Go!" Sonic yelled. Izuku exploded into motion. He didn't think, he just engaged the flow. He sprinted toward the base of the tower. He leaped, planting his foot on the door of a bottom-tier dryer. Don't stop. Half a second, He pushed off, launching himself upward. He grabbed the corner of a rusted frame, hauled himself up, and kicked off against a protruding pipe. He was ascending. He felt good. The wind was in his hair. He reached for a handhold near the top, a loose panel. Creak! The panel gave way. "Whoa!" Izuku yelped. His grip slipped. Gravity took hold, dragging him backward. Panic seized him. The ground was far away. He flailed, trying to grab something, anything. He was going to crash. He stiffened his body, preparing for the impact, closing his eyes. "Don't lock up." Sonic's voice cut through the panic like a knife. "Ball up! Ball up!" Izuku's instinct screamed at him to extend his arms, to break the fall. But 3 months of conditioning overrode the instinct. Izuku tucked his chin to his chest. He pulled his knees in. He wrapped his arms around his shins. He became a sphere. He hit a lower tier of washing machines. Instead of splatting, his curved back struck the metal. He rolled. The impact didn't stop him, it spun him. He bounced off the metal, spinning into the air again, his momentum redirected rather than halted. He uncurled slightly, spotting the ground, and tucked again to roll upon landing. He hit the sand, performed a somersault, and popped up onto his feet. He was dizzy, covered in sand, and his shoulder stung, but he wasn't broken. Sonic was standing there, clapping slowly. "Better," the hedgehog said. "But you looked like a terrified armadillo. You need to look like a buzzsaw." I didn't stop," Izuku breathed, checking his limbs. "I turned the fall into a roll. That's the secret, kid," Sonic said, walking over and poking Izuku in the chest. "Life is gonna trip you. Villains are gonna hit you. If you try to stand rigid like a wall, you'll crack. But if you spin, if you keep that momentum going..." Sonic dropped into a crouch and suddenly curled into a blue ball. He revved on the spot, *VRRT, kicking up sand. "Then you become dangerous," Sonic's voice echoed from the ball. He shot forward, smashing into a stack of wooden pallets, turning them into splinters, and bounced back to his feet, leaning casually against the fridge. "That's the spin dash," Sonic said. "It's offense and defense in one package. You're not ready for the full rev yet. Your spine would snap like a twig. But you need to learn the physiology of the tuck. It's about being fluid." Izuku nodded, pulling out a small, battered notebook from his pocket, not the hero analysis one, a new one titled Speed Theory. He scribbled furiously. Center of gravity, minimize surface area, convert potential energy into rotational kinetic energy. Hey! Sonic snatched the notebook away. Less writing, more rolling. Again. And this time, if you don't get the ring, you owe me 500 sit-ups. 500? You're right, that's too easy. Make it 1,000. Izuku groaned and ran toward the tower. The workshop. Bone density, Tails said, staring at a holographic screen projected from his tablet. It's the limiting factor. It was midday. The sun was beating down on the beach, turning the inside of the shipping container workshop into an oven, despite the ventilation fans Tails had rigged up. Izuku was sitting on an examination table, a repurposed gurney, shirtless, hooked up to a dozen electrodes. He was eating a bowl of rice topped with fish, his third lunch of the day. Tails, the two-tailed fox genius, was hovering, literally, near a whiteboard covered in equations that would have made UA's principal knees a pause. Your skeletal structure is disappointingly human, Izuku, Tails sighed, his twin tails twitching thoughtfully. Sonic's quills and bones are naturally reinforced to withstand hypersonic impacts. He essentially generates a localized inertial dampening field when he accelerates. You, however, Tails tapped the screen, showing a simulation of a human leg bone shattering under high-velocity stress, are made of calcium and hope. Izuku swallowed a mouthful of rice. So I can't get faster? Oh, you can, Tails corrected, landing on the floor and adjusting his goggles. But we have to approach it like engineering a race car. If the chassis is weak, we reinforce the suspension. Tails walked over to a workbench covered in blueprints. I've been analyzing your gait, the fox explained. When you run, you strike with your heel too much. It sends shockwaves up your tibia. Sonic runs on the balls of his feet, almost hovering. We need to retrain your neurology to adopt a digitigrade stance while running. Digitigrade? Izuku mumbled. Like an animal? Walking on toes? Exactly. It acts as a natural shock absorber. But your calves aren't strong enough to sustain that for long periods yet. Hence, Tails pulled a tarp off an object on the bench. Izuku's eyes widened. It was a pair of shoes. But not just any shoes. They were heavily modified. They were modeled after Sonic's iconic red sneakers, but bulkier, with a high-top design that encased the ankle. The soles were thick, made of a strange, translucent white rubber, and there were small, metallic vents along the heel. Prototype Mark I, Tails announced proudly. I synthesized the rubber from those tires we found and treated it with a chemical compound I whipped up from some jellyfish enzymes I found in the tide pools. High friction resistance, high heat tolerance. He pointed to the vents. These are air intake valves. As you run, air pressure builds up. These vents channel that air to create a cushion under your sole. It won't make you fly, but it will dampen the impact by about 40%. Izuku reached out, touching the red canvas. You made these for me? Well, I can't have my test subject exploding his legs, can I? Tails smiled, a genuine, warm expression. Plus, looking at your notebooks, you appreciate good engineering. I saw your designs for those hero costumes. You have a good eye for utility, Izuku. Izuku blushed. I like analyzing how things work. That's your superpower, Izuku, Tails said seriously. Sonic is instinct. He flows. But you? You calculate. You understand the why. That makes you dangerous in a different way. Sonic might be the fastest thing alive, but you could be the most efficient. Tails handed him the shoes. Try them on. We need to calibrate the fit. And then, we need to talk about your diet. You're burning 6,000 calories a day. If you don't eat more, your body will start consuming its own muscle mass. I've drawn up a meal plan. Izuku looked at the shoes, then at the fox. Tails? Yeah? Thank you? Tails waved a hand dismissively, turning back to his computer. Don't mention it. Just don't break them on the first day. Now, let's discuss the physics of the homing attack. It's theoretically possible for a human, but it requires a mid-air orientation shift that. Izuku smiled, lacing up the red shoes. They felt heavy, but when he stood up, he felt a bounce. A readiness. He looked at the whiteboard. The math was complex, but for the first time, it didn't look like homework. It looked like a road map. Aldera Junior High, the invisible boy. School was a blur. Literally and figuratively. For Izuku, the classroom had become a place to recover. He sat in the back, his head on his desk, drifting in and out of a light doze. The teachers had stopped scolding him. They assumed he had given up on life. In a way, they were right. He had given up on their life. Midoriya! The sharp voice of the math teacher snapped him awake. Since you find my class so boring, perhaps you can solve this equation on the board? The class snickered. It was a complex quadratic function, something they hadn't even covered yet. A punishment question. Izuku stood up. His legs felt stiff from the morning's 1,000 sit-ups. He walked to the board. He looked at the numbers. Asterisk trajectory. Parabola. Apex calculation. Asterisk. It was the same math Tails used to calculate the angle of a spin attack off a ramp. Izuku picked up the chalk. He didn't hesitate. Tap 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 tap. The sound was rhythmic, fast. He solved it. Then, purely out of habit, he added a second variable for wind resistance, and solved that too. He put the chalk down and walked back to his desk. The teacher stared at the board. The class was silent. Correct, the teacher mumbled, adjusting his glasses. Sit down. Izuku sat. He didn't look triumphant. He just looked tired. As he settled in, he felt eyes boring into the back of his skull. He shifted slightly, glancing sideways. Katsuki Bakugo was staring at him. Bakugo's eyes were narrowed, red irises glowing with a mix of confusion and irritation. Usually Izuku would flinch. He would hunch his shoulders, try to disappear. But today, Izuku just looked back. He didn't glare. He didn't challenge. He just met Bakugo's gaze with a calm, neutral expression. Asterisk, I'm not looking at you, Kaken. I'm thinking about how to reduce drag on a vertical ascent. Asterisk. Bakugo's brow twitched. He looked like he wanted to scream, to explode, to demand why the pebble in his path wasn't acting like a pebble anymore. The bell rang. Izuku grabbed his bag and moved to leave. He was fast. He navigated the crowded hallway like water, slipping through gaps in the crowd that shouldn't have been there. Deku! Bakugo slammed his hand against the wall, blocking Izuku's path near the shoe lockers. Smoke curled from his palm. You think you're smart, huh? Showing off in class? Izuku looked at Bakugo's arm. He analyzed the stance. Asterisk, right shoulder dropped. Weight on the left foot. He's preparing a right hook if I talk back. Reaction time, 0.4 seconds. Asterisk. I just answered the question, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. Don't lie to me. Bakugo snarled, leaning in. You've been weird lately. You disappear after school. You look different. Bakugo's eyes scanned Izuku's body. The baggy uniform hid the muscle, but the posture was undeniable. Izuku wasn't slouching. He was standing on the balls of his feet. And what are those? Bakugo pointed at the red, bulky shoes. Clown shoes? Trying to be a circus act since you can't be a hero? Izuku looked down at the marked ones. They're running shoes, Izuku said. Running? Bakugo laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Running away, you mean? That's all you're good at. Izuku looked up. For a split second, a flash of green electricity, or perhaps just a trick of the light, flickered in his eyes. No, Kaken, Izuku said softly. I'm done running away. I'm training. Training for what? To be a quirkless loser? To be fast, Izuku said. Before Bakugo could respond, before he could detonate the explosion building in his palm, Izuku moved. He didn't shove Bakugo. He didn't hit him. He simply pivoted. A drop step, a shift of weight, and a spin. He flowed around Bakugo. It was so smooth it looked like a glitch in reality. One moment he was in front of Bakugo, the next he was past him, walking toward the door. Bakugo stumbled, hitting the air where Izuku had been. He whirled around, stunned. What the hell was that? Bakugo roared. Izuku didn't look back. He raised a hand in a lazy wave, a gesture he had unconsciously picked up from Sonic. See you later, Kaken. He walked out into the sunlight, leaving a confused and furious Bakugo staring at the empty doorway. Month 5, breaking the barrier. The training intensified. Sonic stopped holding back. The fun, Brotherly jogging was replaced by brutal chases. If you can't catch me, you don't eat! Sonic would yell, holding a bag of chili dogs while running backward at 60 miles per hour through the industrial district. Izuku learned to navigate the city not by streets, but by vectors. Rooftops were highways. Fire escapes were ladders. Clotheslines were zip lines. But the biggest hurdle wasn't physical. It was mental. It was a rainy Tuesday. The trash at the beach was slick and dangerous. You're thinking too much, Sonic shouted from atop a pile of shipping crates. Izuku was panting, standing at the bottom of a steep incline made of wet sheet metal. He had tried to run up it 10 times. He had slid down 10 times. It's slippery, Izuku argued, wiping mud from his face. The coefficient of friction is too low. My shoes can't grip. Forget the shoes. Sonic jumped down, landing with a splash. You're trying to claw your way up. You're fighting the surface. You have to trust the momentum. Sonic pointed to the ramp. You see a slippery ramp. I see a launch pad. You're hesitating right before you hit the incline. You're bracing for the slip. That hesitation kills your speed. You have to hit it harder because it's slippery. But if I slip at that speed, I'll crash. So crash. Sonic threw his hands up. Crash and burn. But do it at full speed. If you go fast enough, you won't have time to slip. You'll be over it before gravity realizes you were there. Sonic leaned in, his green eyes burning with intensity. Izuku. Fear is heavy. It slows you down. You have to let it go. You have to be willing to break. Izuku looked at the ramp. He looked at the rain falling in sheets. Fear is heavy. He thought about the doctor's office. He thought about Bakugo. He thought about every time he had hesitated, every time he had analyzed the risk and decided it was too high. Screw it. Izuku walked back. Further back than usual. He went all the way to the water's edge. He turned around. He focused on the ramp. He closed his eyes for a second. Asterisk don't think. Flow, asterisk. He opened his eyes. He ran. He didn't sprint like a human. He leaned forward, arms swept back, the arrow run style Sonic used. He pushed off with his toes, the vents in his shoes hissing. He picked up speed. The world blurred at the edges. He hit the mud. He didn't slow down to check his footing. He accelerated. He hit the sheet metal ramp. He felt his feet start to slide. The panic flared. I'm slipping. No, Izuku screamed, forcing his legs to pump faster, harder. He leaned into the slide, turning the loss of traction into a drift. He shot up the ramp like a bullet. He reached the top. But he had too much speed. He launched into the air, 30 feet up. Yes! Sonic cheered from below. But now, Izuku was falling. And there was no landing pad. Just a pile of scrap metal. Turn the stumble into a spin. Izuku tucked. He grabbed his knees. He became the ball. He hit the pile of scrap. Clang crunch bang. He bounced. He spun. The world was a kaleidoscope of gray sky and rusty metal. He hit the ground, rolling, and came to a stop in a crouch. Steam rose from his shoulders. His tracksuit was torn. He was bleeding from a cut on his cheek, but he was laughing. He stood up, shaking with adrenaline. I did it, he whispered. Then louder. I did it. Sonic was beside him in an instant, slapping him on the back so hard Izuku nearly face-planted again. That's it. Sonic crowed. That's the juice. You stopped driving the car and became the car. How did it feel? Izuku looked at his hands. They were shaking, but they felt strong. It felt. Izuku searched for the word. Fast. Welcome to the club, kids, Sonic grinned. Now do it again. But this time, at a backflip at the top. Month 6, the milestone, 6 months, half a year since the aliens landed. Izuku Midoriya stood on the scale in Tails' workshop. Muscle mass up 15%, Tails noted, tapping his tablet. Bone density has increased significantly due to the impact training. Your body is adapting to the stress, technically microfracturing and healing denser, like a martial artist's shins. Resting heart rate is, wow, 45 beats per minute. Izuku stepped off the scale. He felt light. He picked up a pencil from the table. He tossed it in the air. He watched it spin. It looked slow. He could count the rotations. 1, 2, 3. He snatched it out of the air without looking. Your reflexes are clocking in at near superhuman levels, Tails said. You're not a speedster in the biological sense. You don't have the speed, force, or chaos energy. But mechanically, you are approaching the absolute limit of human potential. Sonic walked in, spinning a chili dog on his finger. Boring, Sonic sang. Stats are boring. Let's see the results. We have a test prepared, Tails said. I've set up a speed trap on the seaside highway. It's a straight shot, 5 miles. No obstacles. A timed trial? Izuku asked. A graduation exam, Sonic corrected. For Phase 1, the seaside highway, the road was closed for construction, which meant it was empty. The ocean roared on one side, the city skyline loomed on the other. Izuku stood at the starting line painted on the asphalt. He was wearing his gym clothes, his red shoes, and a pair of goggles Tails had given him to protect his eyes from bugs and wind. Okay, Izuku, Tails' voice came through a calm's earpiece. The goal is simple. Break 100 miles per hour. Izuku took a deep breath. 100 miles per hour. That was highway speed. That was faster than most cars. Sonic stood next to him. I'll pace you, Sonic said. Don't look at me. Look at the horizon. Ready, Izuku said. He crouched. Low. Fingers touching the asphalt. Go! They took off. Sonic was a blur instantly, but he held back, staying just ahead of Izuku, acting as a windbreaker, cutting the air resistance. Izuku pushed. He felt the familiar burn, but he pushed past it. 50 mph the wind whipped his clothes. 60 mph the lines on the road began to merge. 70 mph his breathing became a rhythmic engine. Asterisk in out. In out, asterisk, faster. Sonic yelled over the wind. You've got more in the tank. Don't run with your legs, run with your heart. Izuku gritted his teeth. He thought about being quirkless. He thought about being useless. I am not useless. He channeled every ounce of frustration, every tear he had cried on that beach, into his legs. 80 mph, 90 mph. His vision tunneled. The world fell away. There was only the road and the blue blur ahead of him. Asterisk push. 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 Asterisk. He felt a pop in his ears. The sound of the wind changed pitch, becoming a high-pitched whine. There it is! Tails shouted in his ear. 102. 103. Izuku held it for 5 glorious seconds. He was a missile. He was a force of nature. Then, his lungs screamed, and he began to decelerate. He slowed down gradually, coming to a halt miles down the road. He collapsed onto the grass of the median, chest heaving, staring up at the sky. Sonic skidded to a stop next to him. 105 miles per hour, Sonic announced, looking down at his friend. Not bad for a human. Not bad at all. Izuku laughed. It was a wheezing, breathless sound, but it was pure joy. I was fast, Izuku gasped. You were, Sonic agreed. He sat down on the grass. You're not Deku the wooden doll anymore, Izuku. Sonic looked at the boy who had transformed in 6 short months. You're Deku the jet. Izuku sat up, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked at his hands. They were scraped and calloused. He looked at his shoes. Scuffed and worn. What's Phase 2? Izuku asked, his eyes burning with determination. Sonic grinned, his teeth sharp. Phase 2? Sonic stood up and offered a hand. Phase 2 is combat. You know how to run. Now I'm going to teach you how to hit. Izuku took the hand. Bring it on. The sun set over the ocean, casting long shadows of a hedgehog, a fox, and a boy who had learned that if you run fast enough, you can leave your shadow behind. The second year of Izuku Midoriya's training began not with a bang, but with the smell of burning rubber. It was a scent that had become the perfume of his life. It clung to his clothes, his hair, and his skin. It was the smell of friction. It was the smell of the atmosphere protesting against an object moving through it faster than it had any right to. Izuku sat on the edge of a workbench in the Green Hill base, looking down at his feet. Or rather, what was left of his feet. The Mark I prototype shoes were destroyed. The soles had been worn down to the inner lining, shredded by the asphalt of Mizurufu and the jagged scrap metal of the beach. The canvas was ripped, revealing the taped-up ankles beneath. "That's the fourth pair this month," Tails said, hovering over a holographic display table that bathed the workshop in a soft blue light. The two-tailed fox adjusted his goggles, zooming in on a digital schematic. "Your velocity is increasing faster than the material degradation curve predicted. At this rate, you're going to be running barefoot by summer." Izuku winced as he peeled the ruined shoe off. His feet were covered in blisters and calluses, a roadmap of pain and progress. "I tried to be careful on the turns," he said apologetically, "but when I hit Mach 0.3, the grip just vanished." Sonic was lounging in a hammock made of fishing nets in the corner, tossing a golden ring up and down. "You can't be careful and fast, kid. Speed is violence. You're fighting the ground every time you take a step. If the shoes can't take the heat, they gotta get out of the kitchen." "It's not just the heat, Sonic," Tails corrected, his tails swishing in agitation. "It's the sheer kinetic impact. Izuku's mass is greater than yours. When he initiates a sudden stop or a directional shift, the force exerted on the sole is equivalent to a small car crash. Ordinary polymers can't handle it." Tails turned to Izuku, a gleam in his blue eyes. It was the look of an artist about to unveil a masterpiece. "Which is why," Tails said, pressing a button on the console, "we are done with prototypes." A section of the floor hissed and slid open. A pedestal rose from the ground, accompanied by a plume of cold steam, liquid nitrogen cooling, purely for dramatic effect, Izuku suspected, Sonic's influence. Sitting on the pedestal was a pair of shoes. They were beautiful. They were a deep, vibrant crimson, the color of a race car, intersected by a thick, white strap across the midfoot. The material wasn't canvas. It was a sleek, matte substance that looked like a cross between leather and Kevlar. The soles were thick, white, and grooved with aggressive treads that looked like they could grip a vertical sheet of glass. On the heel, a small, metallic gold buckle glimmered, not just decoration, but a reinforced anchor point. "Behold," Tails announced, "the high-speed power sneakers. The variable G edition." Izuku stared at them, his mouth slightly open. They look just like Sonic's. "Cosmetically, yes. Brand synergy is important," Sonic chimed in, hopping out of the hammock. "But under the hood? Those things are tanks." Tails picked one up. It was surprisingly light. The outer shell is a carbon nanotube weave, heat-resistant up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You could run through a villain's fire quirk and not feel a thing. The soles are made of a synthesized friction-dampening polymer I'm calling Mobium. It grips when you plant, but slides when you drift. He flipped the shoe over, pointing to the heel. "And this is the kicker. Literally. There's a micro-hydraulic shock absorption system built into the heel and forefoot. It captures the kinetic energy of your impact and recycles it. Every step you take charges the next one. It's a perpetual momentum engine for your feet." Izuku reached out, his fingers trembling slightly as he touched the red material. It felt cool and smooth. "Try them on," Sonic said softly. "Cinderella." Izuku slid his foot into the left shoe. It didn't just fit, it clamped. The interior foam molded instantly to the shape of his foot, locking his heel in place. He tightened the white strap, feeling a satisfying click. He stood up. Usually, new shoes felt stiff. These felt like extensions of his nervous system. He bounced on the balls of his feet. The floor of the workshop shuddered slightly, but he felt nothing, no impact, just a smooth, rebounding sensation. "Whoa," Izuku breathed. "Run," Sonic commanded, pointing to the open door of the shipping container. Izuku didn't hesitate. He turned and bolted. He hit the sand outside. Usually, sand was the enemy. It slipped, it stole energy. But the Mobium soles bit into the loose grains, finding traction where there should be none. He sprinted toward a pile of rusted cars. He hit the vertical surface of a delivery truck. Instead of slipping, he stuck. He ran 3 steps up the side, pushed off, flipped in the air, and landed in a crouch. The impact, which normally would have jarred his knees, was absorbed by the shoes with a soft hiss of compressed air. Izuku looked up, his eyes shining. He felt lighter. He felt faster. Sonic was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, smiling. "They suit you, kid," Izuku looked at the red shoes. They weren't just gear. They were a symbol. He wasn't just a boy training on a beach anymore. He was part of the legacy. Tails, Izuku shouted, these are amazing. Of course they are. Tails yelled back from inside. Now come back here. We need to calibrate the grind rails. The art of the spin. With the new shoes came new possibilities. And with new possibilities came new ways to vomit. The spin dash, Sonic lectured, pacing back and forth in the training circle. It is the bread and butter of our style. It is offensive, defensive, and a great way to get under a low-clearance door. Izuku stood in the center, wearing a padded helmet and elbow guards. I understand the theory. Conservation of angular momentum. Reducing surface area to minimize drag. Blah blah science, Sonic waved his hand. Think of it like a spring. You coil up. You build tension. You let the energy scream inside you. And then, you let go, Sonic demonstrated. He dropped to the ground, curled into a ball, and a revving sound filled the air. *VRRRE star. He was a blue blur, vibrating in place, digging a trench in the sand. Then, he shot forward, smashing through a stack of wooden pallets so fast they didn't just break, they disintegrated. Your turn, Sonic said, uncurling. Izuku took a deep breath. He crouched. He tucked his head. He grabbed his knees. Tighten your core. Sonic barked. If you're loose, you'll wobble. If you wobble at 60 miles per hour, you break your neck. Izuku squeezed his muscles. He tried to rev. He kicked his feet against the ground, using the grip of the new shoes to build potential energy without moving forward. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It wasn't a cool engine sound. It sounded like a hamster scratching cardboard. Put your back into it. Izuku pushed harder. He felt the tension building. The world tilted. He released. He shot forward. For a second, it was glorious. He was a rolling projectile. Then, he hit a bump. Because he wasn't perfectly spherical, his shoulders stuck out slightly. The bump caught his shoulder. The spin destabilized. Izuku went from a rolling ball to a tumbling ragdoll. He bounced, flailed, and face-planted into a pile of tires. Ouch! Tails winced, watching from the sidelines. Again! Sonic yelled. You hesitated. You were worried about getting dizzy. If you're spinning fast enough, the fluid in your inner ear doesn't have time to slosh around. Outrun the nausea. It took weeks. Izuku's back was covered in bruises. He went through 3 helmets. He puked more times than he could count, but slowly, the scratching sound turned into a hum. The tumbling turned into a roll. The breakthrough happened on a Tuesday evening. Izuku was tired. He was frustrated. Bakugo had been particularly loud at school that day. Focus the anger, Sonic said quietly. Don't let it explode like Kakin. Compress it. Coil it. Izuku crouched. He thought about the laughter in the classroom. He thought about the word Deku. He thought about being looked down on. He pulled his knees to his chest. He locked his hands. He gritted his teeth. I'll show you. VRRRRZZZTT. The sound was different. It was the sound of a power drill. Green sparks flew from the heels of his red shoes. Now! Sonic shouted. Izuku launched. He didn't wobble. He was a green and red buzzsaw. He tore across the beach, hitting a makeshift ramp. He flew into the air, still spinning, a perfect sphere of kinetic violence. At the apex of the jump, Sonic shouted a new command. Target! The fridge! A suspended refrigerator hung from a crane 50 feet away. Uncurl and kick! This was the homing attack. It defied physics. It required the user to use the stored rotational energy to snap their body open in midair, using the air resistance to alter their trajectory toward a target. Izuku, seeing the fridge in a blur, snapped his body straight. He channeled the spin into a forward lunge. The air vents in his shoes blasted a burst of pressure, correcting his angle. Slam! Both feet connected with the fridge door. The heavy appliance swung violently, the door denting inward with a massive metallic crunch. Izuku rebounded off the impact, flipping backward and landing on his feet in the sand. He stood up, panting, steam rising from his shoes. Sonic looked at the dented fridge. Then he looked at Izuku. Not bad, Sonic grinned. You missed the center by 2 inches. But you would have definitely given a bad Nick a headache. Izuku looked at his hands. They were steady. I can control it, he whispered. I can control the direction. That's the homing attack, Sonic explained. It's not magic. It's locking onto a target and refusing to miss. It's confidence, Izuku. You have to know you're going to hit it before you even leave the ground. The shift, the changes weren't just happening on the beach. They were bleeding into the apartment. Inko Midoriya watched her son over the rim of her teacup. It was dinner time, or rather, Izuku's second dinner. He was inhaling a mountain of katsudon with a speed that was frankly alarming. But it wasn't just the appetite. For years, Izuku had eaten with his shoulders hunched, his eyes on his bowl, as if apologizing for taking up space. Now, he was leaning back in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, ankle resting on his knee. He was tapping his foot against the air in a rapid, rhythmic beat. Tap 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 tap. Izuku? He looked up, his mouth full. You're humming. Izuku swallowed. Oh. Was I? Sorry. Just a tune Sonic hums when he's thinking. It's catchy. You seem happy, Inko said tentatively. School is going well? Izuku paused. He put his chopsticks down. School wasn't going well. The bullying hadn't stopped. The teachers still ignored him. But something fundamental had shifted. School is slow, Mom, Izuku said. He wiped his mouth with a napkin, a quick, decisive swipe. Slow? Yeah. Everyone is moving so slowly. They worry about things that don't matter. They talk in circles. Izuku picked up his glass of water, spinning it deftly in his fingers before taking a sip. It's fine, though. I'm just running my own race. Inko blinked. There was a sharpness to his jawline that hadn't been there a year ago. A fire in his green eyes. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like he was waiting for something exciting to happen. Well, Inko smiled, her anxiety easing just a fraction. Just don't run too fast, okay? Izuku grinned. It was a lopsided, confident grin that mirrored a certain hedgehog's. No promises, Mom? Aldera Junior High, the jungle. The hallway of Aldera Junior High was an ecosystem of predators and prey. And for 2 years, Izuku Midoriya had been the bottom of the food chain. But ecosystems change when an invasive species is introduced. Izuku walked through the front gates. He was wearing his uniform, but he had swapped the standard dress shoes for his red high-speed sneakers. Technically, it was against the dress code. Practically, nobody could catch him to tell him to change. He walked with a long, loping stride. He didn't hug the walls anymore. He walked right down the center of the corridor. Hey, look, it's Deku, a student sneered from a group near the lockers. Still wearing those clown shoes? Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't stop. He didn't even look at them. He just kept walking, his eyes fixed forward. Did you hear me? The student barked, stepping out to block him. I said. Izuku didn't break stride. Just as he was about to collide with the boy, Izuku pivoted. It was subtle, a shift of the hips, a slide of the feet. He flowed around the bully like water around a rock, passing him with inches to spare. Excuse me, Izuku said as he passed, his voice bored. You're blocking the flow. The bully stood there, blinking, confused. By the time he turned around to yell, Izuku was already at the end of the hall, turning the corner. In class, the dynamic was even more strained. The teacher was droning on about career aptitude tests. Of course, most of you are aiming for hero courses, the teacher said, dropping the papers on his desk. But let's be realistic. He looked at Izuku. Midoriya. You're still listing UA High as your first choice? The class erupted into laughter. It was a familiar sound. A year ago, Izuku would have shrunk into his seat, his face burning with shame. Today, Izuku was balancing a pencil on his nose. Midoriya! The teacher snapped. Are you listening? Izuku let the pencil drop, catching it in his hand. He looked up. I heard you, sensei. UA High. That's the target. Without a quirk? Bakugo's voice cut through the laughter like a jagged blade. Bakugo kicked his feet up onto his desk. You're delusional, Deku. You're a pebble. You think you can hang with the elites just because you learned to run away a little faster? Izuku turned his head. He looked at Bakugo. I'm not trying to hang with you, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. I'm planning to go past you. The silence in the room was deafening. Even the teacher looked shocked. Midoriya never talked back. Bakugo's eyes narrowed into slits. Small explosions popped in his palms. Pop pop, I'll kill you, Bakugo whispered. We're in class, Kaken, Izuku said, turning back to the front. Save the fireworks for the festival. The confrontation. The bell rang. The sound of freedom. Izuku packed his bag slowly. He knew it was coming. He could feel the air pressure drop in the room as the other students filed out quickly, sensing the violence radiating from the blonde boy in the front row. Izuku picked up his notebook. Asterisk Speed Theory Volume 4 star. He stood up. Bakugo was there instantly, flanked by his two lackeys. We're not done, Bakugo growled. He slammed his hand onto Izuku's desk. Smoke rose from the wood. You've got a big mouth lately, Deku. Did you hit your head? Did you forget your place? My place is wherever I'm standing, Izuku said, slinging his yellow backpack over one shoulder. Bakugo snatched the notebook from Izuku's hand. What is this trash? Bakugo sneered, reading the cover. Speed theory? You're still writing this nerd crap? You think analyzing physics is going to save you when a villain is crushing your skull? Boom! Bakugo detonated an explosion between his palms, sandwiching the notebook. Smoke filled the air. The notebook was charred, the cover black and smoking. Here, Bakugo said, tossing the ruined book out the open window. Go fetch. Izuku watched the book fly out the window. It arced down toward the koi pond 3 stories below. Izuku didn't scream. He didn't cry. He sighed. That was Volume 4, Izuku said, sounding more disappointed than scared. I hadn't digitized the notes on centrifugal force yet. What are you gonna do about it? Bakugo stepped forward, his chest bumping Izuku's. Cry. Beg? Bakugo raised his hand, charging a larger explosion. He was going to grab Izuku by the collar. He was going to put the fear of God back into the quirkless loser. Stay down, Deku. Bakugo lunged. CHHT. Bakugo's hand grabbed empty air. He stumbled forward, his momentum carrying him into the desk. What the? Bakugo whipped around. Izuku was standing by the classroom door, 10 feet away. He was leaning against the doorframe, checking his fingernails. He had moved so fast that Bakugo hadn't even seen him blur. It was just displacement, and in Izuku's hand was the burned notebook. Bakugo looked at the window. Then at Izuku. How? Bakugo stammered. I threw that out the window. I caught it, Izuku said simply. Before it hit the water. That's impossible. One of the lackeys shouted. You were standing right there. Izuku tapped the cover of the notebook, knocking the ash off. You're telegraphing your moves, Kaken, Izuku said, his voice dropping an octave, imitating Sonic's serious tone. You wind up too much. You focus all your power on the explosion and none on the delivery. Bakugo's face turned a shade of red that defied medical science. Veins bulged in his neck. You bastard! Bakugo launched himself across the room. He used his explosions to boost his speed, a move he was famous for. He was a rocket. Dai! He swung a massive right hook aimed squarely at Izuku's face. Izuku didn't block. He didn't cower. He watched the fist coming. Asterisk trajectory calculated. Speed, roughly 40 miles per hour. Too slow. Asterisk. Izuku dropped into a crouch. He swept his leg out in a breakdance-style flare. He didn't trip Bakugo. He just spun out of the blast zone. Bakugo's fist smashed into the doorframe, blasting wood splinters everywhere. Izuku was now behind him. You're wide open on the left, Izuku whispered. Bakugo spun around, swinging a backhand explosion. Izuku ducked. He rolled, a perfect somersault, going under the explosion. He popped up 3 meters away, near the lockers in the hallway. Bakugo stood in the ruined doorway, panting, smoke rising from his hands. He stared at Izuku. For the first time, there was genuine confusion in his eyes. Izuku wasn't fighting back. He hadn't thrown a single punch. But Bakugo couldn't touch him. Stop running! Bakugo screamed. Fight me! Izuku adjusted his backpack strap. He looked at his childhood friend, his bully, his tormentor. He raised a finger and wagged it. TSK, TSK, TSK. Too slow, Kaken, Izuku said. A small, confident smirk played on his lips. You gotta step it up. Izuku turned on his heel. See you tomorrow. He walked away. Bakugo roared and fired an explosion down the hall, but Izuku was already gone. He had vanished around the corner, leaving only the faint scent of ozone and the echo of squeaking rubber. Sunset on the roof. Izuku didn't stop running until he reached the roof of a tall office building downtown. It was one of his favorite spots. From here, he could see the whole city. He leaned against the railing, clutching the burned notebook. His heart was pounding, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From the thrill of it. He had stood up to him. He hadn't used violence. He hadn't stooped to Bakugo's level. He had just existed, faster than Bakugo could process. Nice moves, a voice said. Izuku looked up. Sonic was sitting on top of the water tower, dangling his legs. You saw that? Izuku asked. I see everything, Sonic winked. You kept your cool. You didn't let him get in your head. And that rescue on the notebook? Prime time. He couldn't hit me, Izuku said, looking at his hands. I saw his attacks before he made them. It was like he was moving in slow motion. That's the zone, kid. Sonic hopped down, landing silently next to Izuku. Your brain is processing visual information faster than a normal human. To them, you're a blur. To you, the world is just waiting for you to move. Sonic looked out at the city, bathed in the orange glow of the setting sun. You're getting there, Izuku. The shoes, the moves, the attitude. You're shedding the skin of that scared little kid. I don't feel scared anymore, Izuku admitted. I just feel impatient. I want to go faster, and you will, Sonic promised. He put a hand on Izuku's shoulder. We've got 1 year left before UA. You've mastered the basics. You've got the gear. Sonic pointed to the horizon. Next stop? The sound barrier. Mach 1. You ready to break some windows? Izuku looked at the horizon. He imagined himself tearing through the sky, leaving a sonic boom in his wake. He gripped the railing. I was born ready, Izuku lied. Sonic laughed. That's the spirit. Now race you to the chili dog stand. Loser pays. Hey! You have a head start. Life's not fair, Izuku. Catch me if you can. Sonic dove off the roof, plummeting toward the street below before curling into a ball and grinding down a telephone wire. Izuku didn't hesitate. He vaulted the railing. He felt the wind rush past his face. He felt the mobium soles of his red shoes hunger for the pavement. He smiled, and then he fell, spinning into the future. The air was not empty space. Izuku Midoriya had learned this the hard way. To a normal person, air is nothing. It is the void between objects. It is what you breathe. But when you move at 400 miles per hour, air stops being a gas. It becomes a fluid. It becomes thick, viscous, and angry. It fights you. It grabs your clothes, it pushes against your chest, it tries to tear your eyelids open. And when you approach 700 miles per hour, air becomes a wall. Whoosh! A streak of green lightning tore across the repurposed industrial zone of Dagoba Beach. The sand had long since been fused into glass in certain tracks from the heat of friction. Izuku Midoriya was running. He was 14 years old, and he was currently vibrating so hard his teeth felt like they were loose in his gums. He was clocking 680 miles per hour. Transonic speed. The world was a tunnel of blurred colors. The ocean was a gray smear to his left. The mountains of sorted scrap metal were rust-colored streaks to his right. The only thing in focus was the path directly ahead, projected onto the heads-up display of the goggles Tails had built for him. Asterisk warning, structural integrity at 85%. Heart rate, 190 BPM. Drag coefficient, critical. Asterisk. Come on! Izuku roared, though he couldn't hear his own voice. The wind roar was deafening, a constant thundering waterfall in his ears. He pushed harder. He dug the toes of his red shoes, now the Mark IV iterations, reinforced with tungsten carbide plating, into the ground. The mobium soles screamed as they gripped the concrete. He felt the pressure building in front of him. The invisible wall. It was the buildup of sound waves, compressed air that couldn't get out of his way fast enough. It felt like running into a giant, invisible mattress that was pushing back with the force of a hydraulic press. 690 mph. His vision began to shake. The edges of his sight turned white. The heat inside his tracksuit was spiking. 700 mph. He was right there. The barrier. The sound barrier. Break it! Sonic's voice crackled through the calm's earbud, barely audible over the wind. Don't ask it for permission, Izuku. Smash it! Izuku gritted his teeth. He leaned forward, adopting the extreme aerodynamic tuck Sonic had taught him, arms swept back like wings, head down, chest low. He channeled every ounce of strength in his legs, every calorie of the 10,000 he had eaten that day. Push! The pressure peaked. It felt like his skull was being squeezed in a vice. The air buffeting him became violent, threatening to throw him off balance, and send him tumbling into a smear on the pavement. No. I won't stop. He visualized the wall. He visualized Bakugo's explosions. He visualized the word Deku. He smashed his foot down. Crack boom. For a millisecond silence. Then, the world exploded. A massive white cone of condensed water vapor formed around Izuku's waist. The shockwave radiated outward, shattering the windows of 3 abandoned warehouses nearby and kicking up a dust cloud 100 feet high. But Izuku was stumbling. The sudden loss of drag, the breakthrough, had thrown his equilibrium off. He had punched through the wall, but he hadn't expected the other side to be so slippery. His left foot clipped his right calf. Oh no, he thought. At 770 miles per hour, a trip wasn't an accident. It was a catastrophe. Ball up. The instinct took over before the thought finished. Izuku curled. He tucked his chin, grabbed his shins, and engaged the kinetic gyroscope Tails had installed in his belt. He became a projectile. He hit the ground. He didn't slide, he skipped. He bounced off a sand dune, flew 300 feet into the air, spun like a throwing star, and crashed into a mountain of old tires that Sonic had set up as a crash pad specifically for this moment. Thud 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 crash. Rubber flew everywhere. The pile of tires collapsed, burying the green projectile. Silence returned to the beach, save for the distant wail of a car alarm set off by the sonic boom. Izuku! Tails' voice was high and panicked over the comms. Vital signs are, wait. Vitals are elevated but stable. Are you okay? The pile of tires shifted. A hand, gloved in white with green accents, punched through the rubber. Izuku dragged himself out. His tracksuit was smoking. His goggles were cracked. He coughed, spitting out a piece of rubber. He stood up, swaying slightly. He looked back at the track. He looked at the shattered windows. He looked at the lingering ring of vapor that was slowly dissipating in the air. Sonic appeared next to him in a blue blur, holding a stopwatch. The hedgehog looked at the watch, then at Izuku, then back at the watch. Mach 1.02, Sonic said. He looked up, and his grin was so wide it almost split his face. You loud little monster. You did it. Izuku's legs gave out, and he sat down hard on a tire. He was shaking, adrenaline flooding his system like jet fuel. Izuku gasped, his chest heaving. I broke it. You shattered it, Sonic corrected, offering a fist bump. Welcome to the Supersonic Club. Population us. The workshop, theoretical limits. The aerodynamics of the human body are frankly a disaster, Tails muttered, welding a new plate onto Izuku's shin guard. It was an hour later. Izuku was sitting on the workbench, nursing a sports drink that was essentially sugar syrup and electrolytes. He was still buzzing. The feeling of breaking the barrier, it was addictive. It was terrifying, yes, but for that split second when the resistance vanished, and he was just gliding? It was pure freedom. The shockwave nearly dislocated your shoulder, Tails scolded gently, flipping up his welding mask. When you broke the barrier, the air pressure differential created a vacuum behind you. You have to streamline your posture. I tried, Izuku said. But it felt like the air was solid. That's the transonic zone, Tails explained, bringing up a simulation on the big screen. Between Mach 0.8 and Mach 1.0, air gets confused. Some of it is moving supersonic, some subsonic. It creates turbulence. That's what shook you. But once you punch through, the air can't react fast enough to get out of your way, so it forms a shock cone. Tails pointed to the new suit hanging on a mannequin in the corner. It was a darker green than his tracksuit, made of a sleek, glossy material. It had white stripes running down the sides, not just for decoration, but acting as microchannels to direct airflow. It had a hood with built-in ears that looked like rabbit ears, but Tails insisted they were aerodynamic stabilizers. The mock suit, Tails introduced. It's made of a nanoweave fabric that stiffens on impact but stays flexible during motion. It'll reduce drag by 20%. Next time you hit Mach 1, you won't stumble. Sonic was leaning against the wall, spinning a golden ring on his finger. Don't bore him with the math, Tails. The kid knows the math. He needs the feeling. Sonic walked over to Izuku. He poked him in the chest. You hesitated right before the boom. Izuku blinked. I didn't think I did. You did, Sonic said seriously. I saw your stride hitch. Just for a microsecond. You were scared. Izuku looked down at his red shoes. It's loud, Sonic. It feels like the world is screaming at you to stop. Like I'm doing something wrong. Like nature is telling me I'm not supposed to be there. Sonic's expression softened. He hopped up onto the bench next to Izuku. Nature is jealous, Izuku. Izuku looked up. Nature made rules, Sonic said, looking at his own gloved hands. Gravity. Friction. Inertia. It made rules to keep things slow and safe. When you run fast, you're breaking the rules, and the world fights back. It screams no. Stop. You're just a kid. You're just a human. Sonic leaned in, his green eyes intense. The sound barrier isn't just physics. It's a test. It's the universe asking, how bad do you want this? If you hesitate, the wall smacks you down. If you don't care? If you decide that you make the rules? Sonic snapped his fingers. Then the wall breaks. You have to be arrogant, Izuku. Just for that second. You have to believe that you are the most important thing in the universe, and the air better get the hell out of your way. Izuku absorbed this. He thought about his life. He thought about being quirkless. The world had told him stop his entire life. The doctors, the teachers, the bullies. They were all just drag. They were all just air resistance. I want to go faster, Izuku said quietly. Good, Sonic hopped down. Because Mach 1 is just the driveway. We haven't even hit the highway yet. Rooftop philosophy, night of the comet. Night had fallen over Muzurifu. The city was a grid of yellow and white lights, a circuit board of humanity. Izuku and Sonic sat on the edge of a water tower on one of the highest skyscrapers in the district. They were eating chili dogs. It had become a ritual. Every milestone, they ate. Izuku swung his legs over the edge. He was wearing the new mock suit, without the hood up. It felt like a second skin. Sonic? MMPH? Sonic swallowed a massive bite. Yeah? Why did you help me? The question hung in the cool night air. Sonic paused, wiping mustard off his lip. I told you, Sonic said. I was bored. That's not it, Izuku said, looking at the hedgehog. You could have just built your base and ignored me. You spent 3 years training a quirkless kid. You built me gear. You ran with me every morning. Sonic looked out at the city lights. His quills rustled in the breeze. You remind me of someone, Sonic said, his voice unusually soft. A version of me, maybe. Or maybe, just Tails when I first met him. Tails? Yeah. He was just a little fox with 2 tails who got bullied because he was different. He thought he was a freak. He followed me around, tried to copy my moves. But he wasn't trying to be me. He was just trying to find a way to be him. Sonic looked at Izuku. When I saw you on that beach, crying over a burnt notebook, I didn't see a victim. I saw an engine that just needed a spark. You had the analysis. You had the heart. You just didn't have the confidence. Sonic stood up and walked to the very edge of the tower, balancing on one foot. People in this world, they're obsessed with quirks, Sonic said, making air quotes. They think power is something you're born with. Like a lottery ticket. If you don't have a ticket, you don't get to play. Sonic spun around, grinning. I hate lotteries. I like races. In a race, it doesn't matter who your dad is or what DNA you have. It matters who runs the fastest. It matters who wants it more. He pointed a finger at Izuku. You asked me why I helped you? Because I wanted to see what would happen if the quirkless kid became the fastest thing on the planet. I wanted to see the look on their faces when you blew past them. Izuku felt a lump in his throat. He stood up, standing next to his mentor. I won't let you down, Izuku said. I'll be a great hero. Hero is a label, Sonic shrugged. Be a hero if you want. Save the cat, stop the bus, kiss the girl. Whatever. Sonic looked Izuku dead in the eye. But more importantly, Izuku. Run your own race. Don't look at All Might's back. Don't look at Bakugo's back. And don't look at mine. Sonic tapped Izuku's chest, right over his heart. You're free. You don't need a license to run. You don't need permission to be great. You just go. Izuku nodded. The weight of the world, which had sat on his shoulders for 14 years, felt light. It felt manageable. Hey, Sonic? Yeah? Race you to the harbor? Sonic's ear twitched. A smirk curled his lip. You think 'cause you hit Mach 1 you can take me? I think I know a shortcut you don't, Izuku grinned. Oh, it is on. The vigilante run. They didn't just run to the harbor. They ran everywhere. It was a joyride. 2 streaks, one blue, one green, weaving through the complex geometry of the city. Sonic was faster, effortlessly so. He moved with a playful grace, grinding on power lines, bouncing off billboards, running upside down under overpasses. But Izuku was efficiency. He used the environment. He wall ran along skyscrapers, used air vents to boost his jumps, and utilized the grapple hook built into his new gloves, a Tails special, to swing around sharp corners without losing momentum. They were a blur to the pedestrians below. A gust of wind. A flash of color. Ghost. A drunk businessman yelled, dropping his sake bottle as Izuku sprinted vertically up the side of his office building. They reached the financial district. It was quiet, the tall glass buildings reflecting the moon. Suddenly, a siren wailed. Sonic skidded to a halt on top of a traffic light, balancing perfectly. You hear that? Izuku landed in a crouch on a mailbox next to him. His breathing was steady. Police band. Robbery in progress. 3 blocks east. High-speed pursuit. High speed? Sonic laughed. In a car? That's cute. Should we? Izuku asked. Technically, this was vigilantism. Illegal. Highly dangerous for a middle schooler. Sonic looked at him. Are you a hero or a statue? Izuku smiled behind his new visor. Let's go. The chase. The villain's name was Turbo Drive. His quirk allowed him to merge with any vehicle and boost its engine performance by 300%. He was currently merged with a stolen armored truck, tearing down Main Street at 120 miles per hour, smashing through police barricades like they were made of cardboard. You can't catch me. The truck roared. Literally, the grill of the truck had formed a mouth. I am the god of speed. Police cruisers were lagging behind, their engines smoking. Turbo Drive laughed maniacally as he swerved around a bus, heading for the highway on-ramp. Once he hit the open road, he was gone. God of speed? A voice mocked. Buddy, you're barely a demigod of traffic. Turbo Drive blinked his headlight eyes. He looked in the side mirror. Something was running next to the truck. It wasn't a car. It wasn't a motorcycle. It was a kid in a green suit. Izuku was jogging. Casually. He was matching the truck's 120 miles per hour with an easy, loping stride, his hands in his pockets. What the hell? The truck screamed. You're drifting into the left lane, Izuku commented, tapping on the passenger window glass. You should signal. Die. Turbo Drive swerved, trying to crush Izuku against the concrete median divider. Izuku didn't panic. He jumped. He vaulted over the truck, planting a hand on the roof, and landed on the other side, still running. Too slow. Izuku called out. Who are you? Just a concerned pedestrian. Up ahead, Sonic was waiting. He was lying on his side in the middle of the road, looking at his nails. Izuku, wrap it up, Sonic yawned. I'm getting hungry. On it. Izuku accelerated. He didn't just run faster. He engaged the spin dash. He curled into a ball, green electricity crackling around him. He rolled underneath the speeding armored truck. Inside the chassis, Izuku uncurled for a split second, grabbing the drive shaft with his reinforced gloves. Physics lesson friction. Izuku dug his heels into the asphalt. The mobium saws locked. He became an anchor. Screech! The sound was horrific. The truck, which had been going 120 miles per hour, suddenly found itself attached to an immovable object. The rear axle snapped. The truck fishtailed violently. Izuku rolled out from under the chassis before the tires could crush him. He leaped onto the hood of the spinning truck. End of the line. Izuku slammed his heel down onto the engine block. Turbo drive's chest. Detroit smash. Impact brake. The hood crumbled. The engine seized. The truck flipped forward, momentum carrying it into a tumble. Izuku backflipped off the crashing vehicle, landing softly on the pavement. The truck skidded to a halt, upside down, steam pouring from the radiator. Turbo drive groaned, demerging from the wreckage unconscious. The police cruisers caught up seconds later, screeching to a halt. Freeze! An officer shouted, stepping out with his gun drawn. Hands in the air. He looked at the wrecked truck. Then he looked for the hero who had stopped it. There was no one there, just a lingering trail of green sparks and a faint blue afterimage. Did you see that? The rookie officer asked his partner. Teleportation quirk, the partner grunted, holstering his weapon. Has to be. Nobody moves that fast. From a rooftop 2 blocks away, Izuku watched the police arrest the villain. He pulled his hood down, wiping sweat from his forehead. Not bad, Sonic said, munching on a chili dog he had seemingly produced from thin air. A little sloppy on the dismount, but you stopped the bad guy. He called himself the god of speed, Izuku chuckled. Blasphemy, Sonic scoffed. There's only one god of speed, and he's much handsomer than a truck. Izuku looked at his hands. He was shaking again, but not from fear. From the realization of what he was. He hadn't used one for all. He hadn't used a quirk. He had stopped a high-speed villain with nothing but his legs and physics. Sonic? Yeah? I'm ready. Sonic finished his dog and dusted his hands. Ready for what? For Yue, Izuku said, looking toward the school that sat on the hill in the distance. For the entrance exam. For everything. Sonic grinned. Well, you've got 10 months left. Let's make sure you don't just pass. Sonic revved his feet, blue sparks flying. Let's make sure you break the record. Timeline update. 10 months remaining. The next 10 months were a blur of refinement. Izuku didn't just break the sound barrier again. He made it his home. He learned to navigate the shockwaves. He learned to use the sonic boom as a weapon, clapping his hands at Mach 1 to create stun grenades. Tails upgraded the gear. The Mark V shoes. The HUD visor 2.0. Izuku grew taller. His shoulders broadened. His confidence solidified into a core of steel. But the most important change was invisible. It was the morning of the entrance exam. Izuku stood on the beach. The trash was gone. All of it. The beach was pristine, white sand sparkling under the sun. The only thing remaining was the green hill base, now camouflaged to look like a maintenance shed. Sonic and Tails were packing up the tornado. You sure you don't want us to drop you off? Tails asked, checking the propeller. Nah, Izuku said, adjusting his red shoes. I'll run. It helps me think. Sonic walked over. He looked at his student. His friend. You know the plan? Go fast, Izuku said. Don't stop, Sonic added. And have fun, they said together. Sonic punched him on the shoulder. Go get him, Tiger. Hedgehog, Izuku corrected with a smirk. Don't push it. Izuku turned toward the city. Uehai was 5 miles away. He checked his watch. The exam started in 20 minutes. 20 minutes? Izuku laughed. I can make a pit stop for a snack. He dropped into a crouch. The green lightning of his bioelectricity, a side effect of the extreme static buildup from his speed, Tails had explained, though it looked suspiciously like a quirk, flickered around him. He took a deep breath. Asterisk, I am not Deku the defenseless. I am Deku the blur. Asterisk. Boom. He was gone. The sand swirled where he had been standing. A perfect circle of displacement. Sonic watched the dust settle, a proud smile on his face. He's gonna be just fine, Sonic said. He's going to be late if he stops for food, Tails noted. He's never late, Tails, Sonic said, climbing onto the wing of the plane. He arrives exactly when he means to.